All right. Good evening, everybody. For the record, Thursday, September 10th. I can't believe it's September. Where did this year go? It's 5:15 p.m., time for the regular meeting of Wenatchee City Council. As always, I call the meeting to order. Our first item of business is pledge to our flag. Councilmember Kulas?
Thank you. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Kulas. And just for the record, we have 6 council members present. Councilmember Huffaker, are you on the line with us tonight? Guessing that's a no? I guess we'll find out. I'm assuming we have 6 and that Councilmember Huffaker is not with us tonight. First item is our consent items, which includes approval of this evening's agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from the previous meetings, and declaring certain computer equipment surplus to the needs of the city. I would entertain a motion if we had one.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that we adopt the consent items, including this evening's agenda, vouchers, and minutes from previous meetings, and that we approve resolution number 2020-25, declaring certain personal property surplus to the needs of the city of Wenatchee, and authorizing the Department of Information Systems to dispose of the personal property identified in the resolution.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Bailey, to approve the consent items, including this evening's agenda, vouchers, and minutes from the previous meetings, and to approve resolution number 2020-25, declaring certain personal property surplus to the needs of the city of Wenatchee, and authorizing the Department of Information Systems to dispose of the personal property identified therein. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We have a few action items this evening. So the first is regarding some preliminary engineering report regarding North Wenatchee Avenue. Are you waiting for Gary, or are you going to do it? Okay. Because you look different than Gary.
I have a little less hair. Thank you, Council. Tonight is, I'll make this brief, it's more of a formality. You've heard and learned about North Wenatchee Avenue for many years. That study actually started, you authorized it in 2011 and moved forward with that transportation plan. And then in 2017, you authorized the study to begin the North Wenatchee Avenue study, which we co-funded that with the Department of Transportation and hired KPG to complete that for you. I wanted to, before I go on, I wanted to specifically thank Gary Owen for seeing that through. He's been a huge part of that and has had a real eye on the goal of getting that through and working diligently with the Department of Transportation, and then also KPG Consulting. They did a wonderful job on this, and specifically Josh Fedora was our lead consultant that did a great job. So we had a robust public outreach in 18 and 19. We had great turnouts at the meeting. It had a lot of interest from people, both online and then also in person. We had a lot of great comments. And so this tonight kind of puts a bow around it and gives us our marching order or our vision for the corridor from here forward. Out of that, we're seeing, as an example, we're just finishing design on the McKittrick signal and the improvements along our property on the washout property we bought. This plan, led the design on that. So those features are there. Department of Transportation is in the design on the Horse Lake Main Lane improvements down by Wendy's, Starbucks, all of that. $18 million project constructed 24-25. This plan put that in motion. They're also designing the roundabout at Highway 2 and Easy Street, that was part of the Connecting Washington money. So we're seeing a plan that actually, sometimes a plan gets done, it gets put on the shelf. We're seeing a plan that's being put to work as we speak. So Gary did want me to mention in the plan, it was there was a lot of interest from the community about urban amenities. So you probably all can think of a gorgeous street that you've driven in some other city, USA, that has these beautiful amenities, artwork and different things. There are things that are above and beyond your sidewalks, your street lights, those types of things. The average cost increase for urban amenities is about 30% on your construction projects, and these are not things that we typically have budget. As an example, Department of Transportation says, hey, we're going to improve Horse Lake and Maiden Lane. It's going to be beautiful sidewalks and so on, but if you want artwork out there, that's the city's responsibility. So I only bring that up tonight, not doom and gloom, but just more with the planning forethought of when these projects come online, how we would want to sort of infuse them with art. I don't know what that might look like. Right now, like at McKittrick and the McKittrick Signal, we're commissioning an artist to help us design some banners that will go up on the light poles with Wenatchee themes. Laura is helping us with that. Luckily, Gary says in that budget, he has a little extra money and he thinks he's going to be able to afford the artwork on that. But I just mentioned that as something to keep in mind as we move forward and as projects come about. That I know that you want your projects, that's the gateway into the city. And we know that when we get all the billboards down and we get all the amenities in, we really want it to look good. That's what people notice when they come into Wenatchee is that gateway on the north end there. So that's about all I have tonight, other than just to thank you for supporting this project and help come alongside us as we went through it.
So we'll see the start of this when we do McKittrick next year. We're going to see it in terms of the width of the sidewalks, the amount of
Yep.
right-of-way that we
Correct.
have on the washtop property, maybe some trees, some stuff like that.
Street
Along that,
trees.
some stuff in the middle. When we do
Mhm.
the right in, right out, there'll be some barrier in the middle that will have some plants of some variety. So we'll see
Correct.
some of that in 2021, correct?
Correct. Yep. That be out to bid on that this fall or late this fall. Gary said everything is lined up. We've got the right of way done, so we're moving along. So,
Good. And this was started, a number of years ago when we thought we had some money for North Wenatchee Avenue and we were going to do McKittrick, and it's like, you better have a consistent theme sort of through the intersection or you're going to get a hodgepodge of stuff. So we spent quite a little bit of money making sure that we had a good thought of what that would look like.
It's it was a $400,000 study. So, but it's money well spent.
Well, I tell you, my concern, seeing this plan evolve has been great because my concern right from the very beginning is that we have multiple agencies and all these kinds of things over a long period of time. That's what you end up with, very hodgepodge looking kind of things.
Mhm.
That's provide with
Yep.
consistency.
Mhm.
Counter those kinds of things. Obviously,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I was going to add, you reminded me of something of there. I don't know if Glenn's not here, but one thing that we'll want to do is to talk then now, and I think Councilmember Kulas will appreciate this, is once you have your vision for the corridor, then you start to look at the land use and you say, gee, if we're going to have wider right-of-ways, wider sidewalks, how do we want those buildings to interact with that new street improvements? And when developments come in, we want them to build to these improvements. So as an example, we have the new hotel under construction out there right now. That was permitted before we had this study. So we weren't able to tell them, where, they were only basing it on the right of way that we had now. And so in the future, if another hotel or another business was built, we might say, gee, you need to dedicate an additional 10 feet of right of way, build the sidewalk back where this plan dictates that. And so that's a land, it interacts with the land use rules that we'd have there. So.
Rob, I'm really excited about what you've got lined up. And it's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. I just have to say this. I am really, really concerned about that roundabout at Highway 2 and Easy Street. I just think it could be dangerous.
Yeah, the Department of Transportation is continuing to study that. The latest data is that it will function better than a traffic signal. But I will relay that to them.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a large roundabout, not a mini roundabout.
Yeah.
Going to build a real one?
A real one.
It's
Yeah.
going to be big, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just going to have multiple lanes and in and out, and yeah. All right, any other questions for Rob about the study or anything that's in the study? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the engineering analysis.
Yeah.
Well, Well, Your Honor, I make a motion that council pass resolution number 2020-12 adopting the North Wenatchee Avenue SR 285 preliminary engineering summary report dated January 24, 2020 as a guidance document for future comprehensive planning and updates to pertinent city land use regulations.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Harold to adopt resolution number 2020-12, adopting the North Wenatchee Avenue State Route 285 preliminary engineering summary report dated January 24th, 2020 as a guidance document for future comprehensive planning and updates to pertinent city land use regulations. Discussion? Discussion. There we go.
It ended up in the vouchers.
Okay.
Somebody had asked for it before too long.
All right, hearing no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Rob.
You.
Next up, some change orders for the Social Security building across the street, which is coming along very nicely, by the way. You guys know Alyssa Webb?
Good evening, or good afternoon, council, mayor. I am here to discuss the change orders number 5, specifically on the city project number 1809, the SSA OHO Wenatchee remodel construction contract between the city and TW Clark Construction. As you know, a year ago, we entered into a contract with TW Clark for the construction of the shell and the TI, or the tenant improvement portions, required by GSA on behalf of SSA and OHO for the lease at 129 South Chelan Street. We have good news. GSA has approved substantial completion of the project, and we now have beneficial occupancy. They will now start paying for rent and the lump sum payment for construction.
Yay.
Yay.
Finally.
Good news. But throughout the course of construction and through the proposal request process, modifications were evaluated and implemented. Some of the changes were requested by GSA, and they will be paid for through their lump sum payment. Others were unforeseen conditions and design discrepancies. The facilities fund is also going to contribute to a few items necessary that we saw necessary during construction. Contingency was built into the project budget. The amount is just over $223,000. Change order number 1 was approved by council when we approved the original contract with TW Clark back last September. Change orders 2 through 4 in the amount of $94,780.32 was signed by the mayor. And we are asking for council's approval for the contract change order with TW Clark and to authorize the mayor's signature for change order number 5 in the amount of $60,563.25. This is to pay for structural repairs to the existing vestibule that we discovered during construction, the relocation of data and power drops for GSA's clarified locations, some roofing repair, repaving the parking lot, and some security system changes per GSA and SSA. We are on track, and Social Security is going to move in October 9th.
Yay. So as we talked about at finance, we're still under the 233,000 contingency, but not by a lot.
Yeah, we
30
have about
grand or so?
$33,000 left in the contingency.
Okay. That you plan on spending some of?
We do.
Okay.
I'm hoping not all.
We're hoping not all as well.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to get that done, be nice to get Social Security in there, nice to start collecting rent,
Yes.
yeah, all those sorts of things that we think are important, so. And start operating the building. Of course, we have to maintain, it's our job to do all the maintenance on the inside too, and change light bulbs and toilet paper and all that sort of stuff as part of the add-on to the lease agreement, so. I'm sure Alyssa and Aaron will be working on making sure our team's in there doing what they need to be doing.
We sure will.
All right, any questions for Alyssa? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move to approve the contract change order with TW Clark Construction and authorize the mayor's signature.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Cuevas to approve the contract change order with T.W. Clark Construction. Authorize the mayor's signature for additional work on the Social Security building. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.
All right, we got some stormwater work to do here, including the adoption of a plan, and then, looks like maybe, I don't know, are we doing, rates tonight too? Doing
Yes,
both?
that is correct. If you like the
Perfect.
plan, we'll present the rates and decide on those as well. So
Okay. So for those of you that know, we've been obviously at the stormwater plan for probably a year and a half. We've all talked about it at different committees, finance, public works, finance. You've all seen it. We talked here about the idea of trying to get some money set aside to, at some point, take the drainages and get them in pipes. And so this is the culmination of all of that work, which includes adopting the comp plan and the rate analysis that we've talked about for probably the last 6 months or so. All right.
Yeah,
Jessica, it's all yours.
Jessica's got a short PowerPoint. I just would like to open up and say thanks again for your support on these studies. Oftentimes, the stormwater utility is sort of looked at as the stepchild of the three utilities, right? People they like to drink their water and flush their toilets, but they're like, why do I need storm drainage? Except for when we have flooding or things like that. So it is a very important utility to our city. It was, for those of you that may recall, in the 1990s, we didn't have stormwater utilities. All the stormwater was funded through the roads, your general taxes. And then in the 90s, many of the Washington cities started creating stormwater utilities so they could fund it as its own standalone and not have to compete against road funding and all the other general funds. So it's a very important piece of your city infrastructure. I wanted to thank the staff, specifically our maintenance and operations group. They were a huge part of this process. Our environmental group, that's part of Jessica's group in the surface water. GIS, Matt Collins back here. Matt has done, and his group have done just a Herculean effort here. And I won't steal the thunder, but Jessica will explain some of the audit work that they did. And then last, of course, to my left here, your Deputy Director of Utilities, Jessica, who has been just an amazing player in pulling this all together. And I know you guys have all worked on a project before where everybody was rowing the boat, and no matter what challenge you overcame it. That's this project. And I think a lot of it's due to Jessica's leadership on this. So take it away.
thank you, Rob. Wow, what an introduction. Yeah, so as Rob mentioned, we've had a stormwater utility since the early 90s, but some of our stormwater system is even older than that. It's up to about 70 years old today. So there's many aspects of this plan, and I think over the years, this is our third plan in the history of the utility. So about every 10 years, we work on this comprehensive planning effort. And while it's not required by the state, which is again unique to the stormwater utility, it is really important for making sure that we as the utility stay on track with our funding, with our capital projects, with staying in compliance with the permits that we have from the state. So all those things come into play and are things that we're looking at and looking forward for the next 10 years with the utility. So some of the utility goals have changed over the years, especially with the addition of the water quality permit, the NPDES permit that we have from the state. But one of the first things, the goal of the utility was just to protect urban area from flooding. So get that water off the road. And just keep in mind too, when we talk about our stormwater system, we're talking about the road. So it's curb to curb, it's all the graded drains in the road that carry the water, all the pipes under the road. And then we also have some newer facilities. When you drive along Riverside Drive, all those green areas off to the side that collect stormwater are now some of our newer portions of the stormwater system that we take care of. Number two now is that we are concerned about water quality. In the late 80s, they figured out that it wasn't just the wastewater treatment plants that add pollution, it's all this water that comes off the roads as well. And then, of course, our other goal, and this is important for the comp planning process, is just to make sure that we're providing a fair rate to folks that is making sure that we can maintain the system, extend the system to support development, and stay in compliance with permits. And then the last part, and this again comes somewhat out of our NPDES permit, is to reduce stormwater runoff, which less water that runs off, the less likelihood it's going to pick up pollutants. and then also to protect public safety. And this comes in with some of our land surface modification and making sure that construction sites don't track mud and dirt in the road that cause a safety issue for bicyclists and motorcyclists and pedestrians. So the plan, I'd like to thank Erlinson, and HDR was the lead. Erlinson was a sub-consultant, as well as FCS Group. They were the team that helped city staff put this plan together. And so some of our goals were to evaluate our stormwater management program, and this is the program that we implement to comply with that state permit. We were also looking to provide some tools for development, the development community, on how to comply with these stormwater regulations. It just seems like every year they get more and more complicated. And so we were looking for how could we put a toolkit together to help people come in the door to manage those regulations. Of course, we were also looking at, okay, so what did we get done in the last 10, 20 years, and what do we have left to do, and what should we be working on moving forward for capital projects? And lastly, of course, is how do we fund that, and how do we fund the ongoing operation and maintenance of our system? So a key part of this project was that we did a gap analysis. We looked at our stormwater management program, we looked at the rules, and we said, how are we doing? You know, what if ecology came in the door today? What would they tell us if they looked at our program? And overall, it looks good. We're doing well. The key, though, is that the program and the ecology regulations that we work under are ever increasing. And looking forward at some of the things that are coming up, HDR recommended that we would need 6.8 new full-time staff members in the next 5 years. We have staff who are like, oh, okay, great. But when we took a closer look at our programs and some of the efficiencies that we've implemented, and we did realize that moving forward, we will need more people. The system continues to grow. It grew tremendously when we annexed Old Station. We're looking at some more extensions of our stormwater system. The requirements keep growing. So we will need more folks, but staff kind of backed that off a little bit. And so what we were proposing and what's built into the rate structure is that we will be looking at adding 3 full-time staff, but not until beginning in 2024. So not only did we say we don't need nearly 7 more people, but we also said, you know what, we can wait a little bit and phase them in at a later time. And mostly those staff resources will be helping with updating program documents, and they'll be with our NPDS program, engineering, and operations and maintenance. So a couple of the other gaps, and you'll see some of our action items that we're going to be implementing through this plan, is just that we do have documents that need to be updated to stay in compliance with our permit. And then we need to work on our record keeping. We're still transitioning from paper records to electronic records, and we're working on it, and we will continue to work on that. We also looked at adding the street tree program to our utility functions. Other cities have seen a benefit in trees, and it's kind of, you know, sometimes you think of trees, well, what is the water quality benefit? Well, they actually provide shade that reduces the temperature of the stormwater going out to the river. And they also capture some of that stormwater so it doesn't pick up pollutants on its way out. So trees are actually shown to have a great water quality benefit. And so as part of this, you know, one of the issues we have here is, you know, how do we pay to maintain street trees? They're not really in a park. Are they part of the road? So through the stormwater utility, we have proposed to include funding $100,000 each year for to support parks and streets and maintaining those street trees along our public right-of-way. So that's a new program that we are adding as part of this plan. Did I miss anything on that, Rob?
No, just
Okay.
to add, it's, so the Parks Department has a street tree program now, but it's severely underfunded. And so this will infuse more money into their budget so that Dave Ayers and Rob Richards can have the funding they need to do tree replacement, tree pruning, all of those things that associate with trees in the right of way. So we do have a program, but it's helping, it's, you know, they're competing against general fund money, and this will give them that dedicated $100,000 a year for the program.
And just to mention, you know, the program, when I talk about the program, it's actually, there's many elements to it, including education and outreach. And this is a fun picture from our after-school program where we work with elementary school students and introduce them to what we do and how they can protect water quality too. And we also deal with fun things like illicit discharges. And so usually you think of illicit discharge like somebody dumping paint in the storm drain. Well, this person dumped a whole transmission. So
Wouldn't fit.
yeah, good thing it didn't make it down the drain. So these are just some of the things that our stormwater staff are doing out there to keep the water clean. So operations and maintenance, we identified some things. As I mentioned before, one of our gaps was our record keeping and working on getting our records electronic. And so we're continuing to work on implementing a work order system and an asset management database. We're also looking at implementing a program to keep that stormwater system data up to date. Matt plays a really key role in this with the GIS system and managing that data and keeping that in our operations and maintenance team field, verifying what we have out there. And then we're also looking at increasing our video inspections of those storm mains, especially those ones that are 70 years old. Some of the pipes we used back in the day was corrugated metal pipe, and we know some of those pipes have lost their linings and they don't last long after that. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on those things and making sure we're taking care of them as
The
needed.
picture makes me think we shouldn't have annexed Old Station.
No comment.
Yeah. Moving on. So another key here is also our flood control action items. As you may recall, we've had problems with canyon drain flooding, and this is also a tricky issue because it is intertied with our stormwater system, but it is also a somewhat separate issue from our stormwater system. But what we've done is look at ways to participate in the county flood control zone district. They're doing some great things up in the canyon that help us, but there's also some projects that we can do here in the city to help prevent flooding. Some of those things actually are improving and extending parts of our stormwater system so that drainage areas, urban areas aren't draining into the canyon drains and exacerbating flooding during flood events. So part of this plan is to seek federal funding, and so we have included in our capital plan a match for a much larger project to pipe some sections of the canyon drain in the urban area. So we'll see that when we get to our capital projects. So for new development and redevelopment, again, like I said, we're working on toolboxes, we're working on standard plans and policies, all things to help streamline development. We're also looking at updating our stormwater code and other codes to require maintenance bonds for new stormwater infrastructure. So this is once they build a pond, we're making sure that that gets taken care of and maintained. We're also have built money in to help look at our drainage basins. So one of the areas that we did not spend a lot of time on was updating our modeling because we needed to really verify our infrastructure. But that modeling is really important for when we extend and we also have new development coming in of knowing what capacity do we have in the system. So we're actually already kicking off some of those sub-basins by looking at the Springwater Basin this fall. So more of that to come, better understanding of what we have out there for capacity and how we can extend and support future development. Also like to point out in this picture, I'm very excited about, be on your left there, the folks. This is a great example of how some of our local contractors have really adopted these stormwater measures, and now it doesn't look like much, but the fact that they've actually let grass grow and left vegetation on that hillside is fantastic, and that's something we don't typically see. We see usually the things on the right where they just strip everything off. So kudos to our contractors out there who are doing a great job and really seeing lots of cool things happening out there, more so than we've ever seen before. So now the capital projects, this was a big portion of our program, and so I'm going to move over, and hopefully everyone has had a chance to take a look at this story map that Matt and his GIS team put together for us. It's still out on the GIS portal, and it's a really cool way. So we'll just run through a couple of the projects that are coming up in the near future. So the Peachy Street Outfall project, this one is a bit of a landmark for the city since it's one of the first projects that is completely about water quality. It's about getting the sediment out of the water before it heads to the Columbia River. And this comes as a result of quite a number of years ago, we had some pretty high turbidity discharges coming out of our Peachy Street outfall. And it was, well, the DOT was doing the George Seller interchange project, and they did some testing during a rain event that they were required to do for their construction project and found that all the dirt wasn't coming from their project, it was coming from the city stormwater system. So now we're looking at adding some water quality structures to help get that dirt out. And these are vaults that our O&M crew are really good at maintaining. And the even better part of this project is that it's 75% funded by the Washington State Department of Ecology. So nearly $1 million project, and they're contributing 75% of that. Tacoma Street, we're also supporting that project, which will be going next year. And Maple Street as well. Another water quality improvement one is Walla Walla Avenue. And this is another project that's nearly $1 million that Ecology is funding at 75% of that cost. This will fix the swales along Walla Walla that have struggled to maintain vegetation. So this will be an exciting project, is expected to roll out in 2022. The North Wenatchee facility, phase 2. So this has been a complicated project. You may recall the Holly Street outfall repair. The pipe had basically collapsed and twisted and was taking down the PUD's yard. So phase 1 was to get that pipe fixed, and phase 2 is going to be helping support all of the action that's happening out there between Confluence Parkway and the North Wenatchee Avenue redevelopment. So these are stormwater improvements on the downstream side that will help with all of that future activity that's happening out there. And then moving on, we have more projects. The Roosevelt Drainage Project is an area where we don't have stormwater infrastructure and have needed it for many years. And so this is an opportunity. It's a smaller project, but it's an opportunity to get stormwater in an area that has struggled with intermittent flooding for a long time. And then we also have some work on some of our outfalls in other areas. But I won't keep going because there's lots and lots of other things we want to talk with you tonight. But I encourage you to take a look at this and let staff know if we have any questions about these projects. This story map is a great way to see all of the things that we're going to be doing, hopefully with stormwater. And of course, here's some of the pictures of things that we did get done in the last 10 years. So we have the Holly Street outfall repair, as I mentioned. We built a decant facility for managing stormwater and street sweeping waste. So when we go out and clean all those catch basins out with the Vector truck, we now have somewhere to manage that waste that's in compliance with current solid waste and stormwater rules. And then we also built a new storm main on Marjo, another one of those smaller projects to help with localized flooding problems. So now the last piece of the puzzle was, okay, so what's all this going to cost?
Of course.
Yes. So one aspect of this, and Rob mentioned the audit. So as we were looking through our accounts and we were developing our rates and looking at our rate structure, we noticed that some of the accounts weren't necessarily being billed for all the right amount. There were issues there. And so that launched us on a much bigger effort than what we'd ever envisioned starting with. But I think at the end of the day was well worth all of the effort that was put into it. So the first part was we had the consultant go through and they measured the average area of all the single family residents in the city. And in 1990, it was 3,000 square feet of impervious area was the average area for a single family resident. Today, the average area is 4,200. So that just gives us a more accurate measurement of our community. And that is the basis for what we bill our commercial and industrial customers. The other piece of that was we have to go in and measure the impervious area for all those commercial and industrial parcels. And that was where when we started looking at that, we saw a lot of discrepancies. So part of that was the imagery that we had at the time and keeping the database up to date. So the exciting news is that as a result of that audit, we were able to increase the billable area of impervious surface by 560 acres. So ultimately for the community, that means it's like adding more customers without really adding more customers, but you're spreading that money that you need and helping to keep the rates as equitable and cost effective as they can be for the community. So that was a really big step in this process. Anything you want to add on that, Rob?
No, just again, kudos to Matt and his crew. They did all that. Imagine each parcel, looking at it and measuring the impervious area on each commercial property through the city. When they came back with 560 acres, I did the math 3 times. I said, that can't be. I mean, that is a lot of impervious area if you think about it. So, but anyway, it's accurate now. We will have property owners that will come in and dispute that, and we have a process where we'll go out and meet with them and measure it. And Certainly, there might be one or two that are off slightly, but we would have a process for that. But it's much more accurate than it was.
Yeah. And the really exciting part for me is that we now have a database in GIS that shows what we mapped, and so it'll be easier to share with customers how we were able to calculate their impervious area. And then that also leads us into having a better process for as redevelopment occurs or parcels change hands, we'll be able to keep better track of those things through GIS. So using the tools we have to do a better job moving forward. A couple other things, as mentioned, we added a couple of things about the rates. We added the 100,000 for the street tree program. We also set up the rate structure as recommended by FCS Group that we would, in the beginning, use existing reserves that the stormwater utility has and rates to pay for capital projects with the goal that we would not borrow any money until 2028. So less borrowing, more use of reserves and rates. It also, though, ends up with a initial increase that's higher, but then after a couple years, it ramps down and then is a pretty flat rate increase after that. The other key to this rate structure is that we decided to phase in, or was recommended by the Public Works Committee to phase in Old Station. So we took a look after we got some of the initial numbers back on the rates. We came back, so we presented some of the initial findings in March to Public Works, Economic Development Committee, and Finance. We came back in May and we showed what those rates would look like on some of these new parcel calculations with the new equivalent residential unit. And for Old Station, it was challenging. As you'll see in the bottom part, right now, some of the folks in Old Station are getting an 82% discount. So that's partly because they had a special discount program under the county, which will go away at the end of the year. And they were at a lower rate because we grandfathered in under that lower rate for a period of time. So to kind of help bring them up to speed a little more slowly than just a really quick transition into a much higher rate, we developed this phased-in approach where next year we're proposing the Old Station folks will get a 26% discount on the city rate. And then in 2022, that discount will go down to 14%. And then by 2023, everyone will be paying the same rate under the same rate structure. So that was a recommendation to kind of help phase in and not have such a big impact on the Old Station customers right out of the gate. So the last piece of this is, so I'm not FCS Group and I don't have a bunch of numbers and tables for you, but I think this graph kind of represents where we're at. So you'll see in 2020, our revenue line is underneath the green, which is our operating expenses. So we are using reserves and some of that gap with the orange capital above is being filled by those ecology grants I talked about. So right now the city has in funding from the state about $1.6 million that we're using for capital projects in the near term. But that's all we have for now, and we'll try to continue to get grants, but we also need to have those rate revenues help take care of increasing operating expenses. So you'll see we do have increases in the green to operating expenses, but they're pretty steady. We do have planned some good capital projects. And then as you'll see in 2028, where again, capital projects exceed the revenue line in black, that's where we would be bonding, I believe it's 3.7 million to help keep up with those capital project demands. So this is what adopting the rates that we're proposing would provide for us moving forward with utility. Are there any questions about the rates or the comp plan? Oh, thank you.
So any thoughts about, I know we have a lot of private stormwater systems, any thoughts about city involvement in private stormwater systems to make sure that they're cleaning their stuff and making sure that they're maintaining their private through HOAs or anything? What are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, so we have several things going on. So we do have an inspection program that, but it's only for those home subdivisions that were built after 2011. So the things that are falling under the permit requirement. And there is some concern that some of these ponds and other facilities that were built prior to that probably are not getting as much attention as they deserve either. So the regional stormwater group is actually looking at doing, it's actually a permit requirement to do an effectiveness study, but one of the effectiveness study options we're looking at is to go out and take a look at those subdivisions before 2011, before the permit requirements, and see how they're doing, and see what we can do to help encourage those HOAs and property owners to maintain them better versus our post-2011 facilities that have maintenance agreements with the city and are under regular inspection program by our staff. So we are looking into that, and there will come a time when the permit will require us to go back, but we're going to take an early look at how are things going out there. So
Just going to, first of all, that was 560 new acres. That's almost a section of land. Biggest piece of real estate. But the specific question is, when do the rates go into effect?
So what we're proposing is that the rates would go in effect January 1st, of 2021. Yep. And we are, if the plan and code are approved tonight, Public Works has been working closely with utility billing on putting together some outreach for customers to let them know. We'll be letting them know through their utility billing. We'll also have special letters to go to the folks in old stations, since they will have the biggest impact to them and other folks that may see changes through the audit more so than others. So we're doing the best we can to let people know as soon as we can if this is moving forward. So you're welcome. I do have a couple comments. I don't know if Mr. Jeff Sutton is here, but he provided comments. He's a resident here in the city, and I just wanted to share these really
Okay,
quick for
perfect.
council.
Yep.
Jeff lives at 1498 Elmwood, and he asked about the monthly fee, said that does not reflect the impact of development or property has on the stormwater system if it retains stormwater on site. A property that retains a 100-year event is treated the same as that of the property that discharges directly to the city's stormwater system. And he is correct. We charge everybody the same. If you're a single family, if you're on the uphill side and all your stormwater drains onto the road, that uphill property pays the same as the downhill property where all the water runs back into their yard and they keep it in the backyard. So everybody pays the same rate. And it's our structure for billing. And if you start to get into who retains water and who doesn't retain water, and the stormwater regulations require different retention requirements, it becomes very challenging to try and figure out a rate structure that addresses who's discharging and who's not discharging. So it's a really common, the other way to look at this is that, we're maintaining the roadway and everybody uses the road the same. Now, granted, not everybody's discharging the same amount of water, but we all use those roads to get to and from the store, to and from the hospital, wherever you're going. And really, these rates are meant for maintaining that roadway. And
System all over the city.
This is all over the
not
city,
just
yes.
necessarily in front of you.
That's right. And the program is the same for everybody, whether you discharge to us or not. It's the same program for education outreach, for illicit discharges. So it's kind of the bigger picture is how we bill folks, not on individual sites.
And I've had a few people complain to me about that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've
Yeah.
got a private stormwater system. Why do I have to pay to build the private one when I developed and pay this monthly as well? So
So it's,
I'm comfortable with it, and it's the way we do it. So
yeah, and it's common practice for utilities. How we're billing is nothing unique. His next question was, why are switch yards treated differently than gravel surfacing at other development? And this is in reference to, for switch yards, the gravel area underneath the equipment is meant to retain water. So it's very deep gravel area. Our code actually says graveled areas like parking lots are considered to be impervious surfaces. And so we do typically charge stormwater fees for those graveled areas. The exception is this area under the electrical equipment. So I just clarified for him that the reason for that is it's meant to be impervious. It's meant to be pervious. It's meant to drain water. And we do charge the switch yards for all of their driveways, their parking areas, their structures, and everywhere else that's considered impervious. So we do have some exceptions to our code, and that happens to be one of them, and that's why. He also asked, when are impervious area assessments and measurements made, and can they be adjusted or changed monthly or yearly? We typically only make changes to those adjustments when it is when there's redevelopment or there's a change of ownership of the parcel or boundary line changes. Other than that, of course, we're always happy to take customers' requests to evaluate their impervious area and make sure we're billing them correctly and talk them through how we came up with their, but we are not planning on making regular monthly or yearly adjustments to these. And then how are assessments made for private roads within a development that may be divided ownership of an HOA? So for commercial sites, we don't bill the individual members, we bill the HOA. So it gets included in there. Or if you're in, say, a mobile home park where they're all individually water metered, then we just treat them all like single family and we don't worry about the private road. So it all works out in the end, in the wash. We do capture those private roads just in different ways depending on the development and how they're metered.
Yeah, the 4,200 square foot average is really capturing that as well. So the mobile home example is we know the mobile home roof areas, this is not 4,200 square feet, but when all the driveways serving those, so that's how those averages are developed.
So those are the only comments received. SEPA was completed last week with no other comments. So we're ready to
Okay.
your feedback.
So we have two action items. One is to approve the comp plan, and the other one is to make changes to the code with respect to rates.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that the council adopt the 2020 City of Wenatchee Comprehensive Stormwater Plan.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Harold to adopt the 2020 City of Wenatchee Comprehensive Stormwater Plan. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Your Honor, I'd follow that up with a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-24, amending Chapter 9.16, Storm Drainage Utility of the Wenatchee City Code.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Hornby to adopt ordinance 2020-24, amending Chapter 9.16, Storm Drainage Utility of the Wenatchee City Code. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Good work,
Jessica, thanks so much. Rob?
Thanks for your work.
Matt, thank you, sir. I know it's been a long process, so thanks for all your work and.
And I won't be here for the next 10-year update.
What?
I forgot to mention, utility billing has had a huge role in this and helping, and they are going to receive the calls. And so, so we need to thank Brad and his team for that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, most definitely.
great. All right.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
And lastly is an amended lease for the Apple Blossom Festival. Aaron Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here tonight to present the second addendum / amendment to the lease with the Washington State Apple Blossom Festival Association. The city owns and maintains the building at 2 South Chelan where the Apple Blossom office is located. We started leasing to the Apple Blossom Association back in 2005. And then in 2015, there was an extension on that lease with conditions to be able to assess the lease rate in 2020. As discussing this with Apple Blossom and taking a look at the absence of the 2020 festival, we're proposing tonight to extend the current lease rate and to evaluate it next year. The financial impact is basically that the lease will remain the same through 2021, and then in 2022, we'll see any sort of increase at that point. This amendment, second amendment, it basically just does that. It extends it for a year at the current rate. Are there any questions?
So I think the festival has been in there, I didn't realize it's been 15 years, wow. And of course, they only release in the top floor, and we occasionally would have a tenant in the bottom floor. There'd be, I think Score was in there for a while, and I don't know, there's different sort of, and ultimately, everyone sort of left the building, and then Darcy just took over the basement as well. So I'm not sure the lease reflects exactly what it is she's using, but they're obviously they have lots of things going on there. So this gives them a chance to sort of figure it out. They've obviously had a tough year without a festival, and they had some expenses they're incurring with no revenue. So they asked for a 1-year extension. Let's see where things are at next year. We'll probably adjust not only for the usage of the building, but whatever sort of normal rates are. But I think it made sense to give them 1 year, because the other option was we got to sort of get it up to market value or do something. So I think they decided let's just do 1 more year flat, and then we'll
And we'll
stick
take it.
Aaron on it next year at this time. And hopefully they get to have a festival next year. I don't know. Who knows what that looks like, so.
Oh, yes, we are.
So as the lease rate, is that about a square footage?
Yeah, what are they paying? $1,300 a month or something? It's been adjusted. What's that?
$13.25 currently.
Okay.
When you talk about market rate,
Market rate for that building's probably, with the basement, I'm guessing 2,100, 2,200. We'd probably give them a little discount because they're the Out Blossom Festival, but, and we fixed it up. My God, I don't know. Don't even tell me how much money you have into the roofing part and the paint and the air
reglazing.
conditioning system and,
Yep.
yeah,
We've made some improvements, so
Oh, some
justify,
improvements.
yeah. That we probably could increase our lease rate if whether or not there was a different tenant. So
Yeah.
we'll assess all of that as we go through this, hopefully next year.
I think there's new carpet.
Yes, there's.
Yeah,
no
no, it's,
the outside word of it.
yeah, no, and it's
yeah.
great, and I'm glad
More
they're using
presentable.
it, and good for them, and we don't need to get the top of the line, but it makes sense to wait a year and see where things sit before we revisit that. Yeah. I'm glad Darcy's negotiating with Aaron, because, yeah, you can be the mean guy. So I would entertain a motion if we had one.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion, City Council approve the second addendum amendment to lease between the Washington State Apple Blossom Festival Association and the City of Wenatchee, and authorize the mayor's signature.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hornby, second by Councilmember Esparza, to approve the second addendum amendment to lease between the Washington State Apple Blossom Festival Association and the City of Wenatchee, and authorize the mayor's signature. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Mayor's report. I guess I got 3 or 4 things I'll sort of discuss. Obviously, as you guys all probably know, shortly after the last time we met, your police department, public works, building, planning, I don't know who all helped remove a gentleman off of the street down by the Pybus Market. So lots of comments in the newspaper and media about that. So his stuff is at our South Yard. He spent 1 night in jail and then was released, of course. He is now squatting on Thurston Street. So he has found another car, and now he's making a mess on Thurston Street. So we will continue to do what we can to try to chase that around a little bit. There's been some discussion. I made some comments a couple weeks ago about the homeless situation in our valley and Lighthouse Ministries and stuff, and there's been some discussion. I've talked to a number of folks who've called me, we've chatted, and I do have a call. We're playing phone tag with Sean Arrington, who's the executive director of Lighthouse. So hopefully in the next day or so, we'll get a chance to chat a little bit. So staff continues to chase. We cannot take, we used to take 1 person to maintain Locomotive Park, but the guy got chased off, so now we take 2 people down there just to make sure that we have numbers. Damage to they continually rip out all the boxes, irrigation boxes in all the parks, whether it's Locomotive, Ale, the downtown parks, all of them. We've taken the water out of the convention center fountain. I think that's probably helped some. So just sort of chasing everybody around. Not much we can do. Hands are pretty much tied in terms of what it is we can and can't do. But your police department's doing as good a job as they can. And it took, how many were in the meeting last Monday when you guys, I mean, every department's involved in trying to get one guy moved. Yeah, like they're all involved, yeah. Just the amount of staff time and energy and effort and money that it spends to do stuff like that. So anyhow, we're trying our best. Not even sure, I we do have a new police officer, Alyssa, came to us from the city of Seattle, so we swore her in last week. So nice to have her here working for us. She'll be through our training and then hopefully on the street very quickly after that. Lateral, yep. And so I went to the swearing in down at the police station. And our normal crew of folks were there. And 8 people that she brought. Every one of them Seattle police officers. Her boss, other ladies that worked in her department, other people. Yeah, there was like crowns like handing out business cards. Like, literally, I think there was 8 of them, all Seattle PD people that came over for her swearing in, which says something about what they think of her to begin with. And just, yeah. So anyhow, just thought that was sort of interesting. And that does get our police department full to budget. So, yeah, we are at 43 now, and we've took him 4 years to get to the full number, but he is fully staffed as of today. So now we've got 2 in the training, so they're not all on the street, but we're fully staffed to this point. That's really about it. I think we are working on the budget. Brad is probably 3/4 of the way through the first draft, so we'll see something. Finance committee will see something in 2 weeks. And you'll see it right after that, the first round of it. So been working, got back and forth with the jail on a contract for next year. They started at 2.2. They're down to 1.7. We're at 1.3, so we're getting closer. Don't have a deal yet. We were supposed to hear from them this week. We haven't yet, but I'm sure there'll be some communications with them over the next little bit. And I would venture to guess that we'll probably get a contract together with them. But did meet with the city attorney. His contract is up this year. So I think we've talked about a 2-year contract with a 1% increase this year and maybe a 2% next year in terms of the overall cost. He understands we're going to have some budget issues. So I think it makes sense to keep Steve and his team going. We've got Danielle working on the police side, Steve and others in his firm. So I think it makes sense to keep that going. So we'll hopefully have a contract for you guys in the next maybe month or so. So we had that meeting. Laura, what am I missing? Yeah, so the Housing Authority, we have had a private citizen. I want to say it was Mike Leeds. Mike has been on the Housing Authority board. He's a title insurance guy for a long, long time. He has resigned, and so it is our job to appoint somebody. I think the Housing Authority would like somebody who sits at the dais to be representing the city on the Housing Authority. So I thought I'd leave that up to you guys to talk about a little bit. We talked about maybe staff, but I think since the staff permits, Glenn and his team, they permit buildings. They felt that was a bit awkward. So either someone from the executive branch or the legislative branch probably ought to sit on the Housing Authority board. I don't want to answer today. We'll bring it back up in 2 weeks, but you might think about. That's one that we've had a private citizen sit on for quite some time. So, or if you can think of another private citizen that might be interested, either of those.
Alan Beidler, is he still on it, or was he?
Boy, Tammy says he's on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So just something to think about. We'll bring it up in 2 weeks if you think of somebody who might be willing to sit on the Housing Authority board. We think we have another building for the veterans. We'll know in the next week or so. So the Ballard building did not work out. I won't comment as to why. We do have another location we think is going to work for them at a lesser price. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be bringing a lease agreement to you folks to give them a spot as the charter school gets ready to start some remodeling down at the other location. Anything else, Laura? I covered all of it? All right. Council members, anything for the good of the order?
The subcommittee of the Low Barrier Shelter Committee met last week, and we went over criteria for what we'd like to see in selecting a site for a low barrier shelter. And we have another meeting again on Monday.
From the Health Department Board, we learned yesterday that there are 6 epidemiologists coming into town.
Oh, I heard that.
Yeah, that are Spanish speaking, to just kind of study and try to figure out a way to contain the, the disproportionate rate that the Latino community is getting the virus. So we'll see.
Okay.
We're going to meet with them and we'll see what they do.
They're coming from Atlanta, the CDC?
There's 4 coming from Atlanta, and 2 from somewhere else, I think California.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Anybody else?
Just, as I mentioned a bit before the council meeting, this link is, we're deep into a study of routes and facilities.
Okay.
All kinds of things that are to do that. Formed a subcommittee to be in charge of managing the whole process. But they're doing, I think they're doing a really good job. A lot of things that need to be tweaked, but basic route system and basic, what you look at, what Link looks like today is not much changed from what it was when they started the thing.
Right.
And so there's a lot of, part of the study is working with today, we're looking at a lot of the demographics. All those routes may need to be changed.
And a lot's happened in technology since Link was about,
Yeah.
with phones and GPS and, yeah.
Just, the system is set up basically with the Columbia Station is kind of the hub.
Mhm.
It's kind of like you ever fly in, flight Delta. No matter where you're going, I don't care if you
Yeah.
you go through Atlanta, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So I don't care if you're flying
Yeah.
from New York to Seattle, you
Fly to-
stop in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So there's some conversation that started on today, just, well, maybe we don't need to, there's a lot of routes that maybe that isn't necessary.
Right.
And so anyway, that's an ongoing process. I don't, it'll be next year probably. We'll have full recommendations and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Things to start with. But at any rate, it's interesting to see what the information data.
Mark, Travis, anything? All right, so we'll have a work session next week. So I'm not even sure what's on it, except I think going over the triad development agreement, I think is probably on next week. And I'm not sure what else is, but.
City Hall, Space Day.
Okay, perfect. Okay, excellent. All right, everyone, we're adjourned.